Premier League 25-26 alternate predictions. We're starting off. First manager sacked. This is very, very juicy. There's a few managers already under pressure. You think of someone like Scott Parker at points when he's got sides promoted, has lost his job quite quickly. I think it'd be a bit harsh in Burnley's situation. He could go. Ultimately, Pereira at Wolves has got a very thin squad. Sometimes results dictate that a manager has to leave. I don't think he will be the first to get sacked, but he's definitely in the shortlist. Graham Potter, if things go awry with West Ham United, I don't think they will. They've got enough quality, but it felt like Potter was actually under a little bit of pressure at the back end of last season. And a random one for you, Thomas Frank. Now, I think he's a fantastic manager. I rate Spurs massively highly next season. I think they're going to do really, really well. Just come off the back of the euphoria of winning a trophy. But you look at what happened with Nuno Espirito Santo at Spurs, a bit of a culture kind of clash, and ultimately Spurs sacked him quite quickly. Could that happen to Thomas Frank? I don't think it will, but he is in the running, in my opinion. But the one that will be the first manager sacked in my predictions will be Daniel Farke. They wanted to get rid of him in the summer. I think it was the right and loyal decision to keep him going into the start of this season and giving him some decent backing. I'm not sure if Longstaff is enough to keep Leeds in the Premier League next season, but I actually think 3 games if they don't get a win, I think they could sack him as soon as that. And actually, I think they kind of should have committed to sacking him. They're either completely not talking about sacking him, don't do it at all, or commit. Don't dip your toe in the water, because Daniel Farke already feels like he's on very shaky ground, very thin ice already. So you might as well just build a brand new project without him in the Premier League. Either way, the squad isn't good enough to stay in the Premier League, in my honest opinion. The biggest fan meltdown. I will give you the date, the time where you need to check in. I know exactly what's going to happen. The biggest fan meltdown will be the first match round of the Premier League. It will be 17th of August, 9 p.m. AFTV. If Man United beat Arsenal in the opening game of the season, AFTV will go into meltdown. It will. They're already putting huge pressure on Gyökeres. The Arsenal fans on some of these videos, as much as they are so expectant of Arsenal winning trophies, and by the way, rightly so for how big the football club is, if they lose to Man United opening game of the season, the pressure on Arteta from certain people in the YouTube space or in the social media space, rightly or wrongly, will be massive, because Arsenal can't be losing to Man United this early in the season. It won't make a massive difference if Arsenal pick up 4 and win the Premier League. You can lose your opening game in the Premier League. It's a long old season, but the pressure, the meltdown will be huge. Huge. It's going to happen. Breakout footballer. I think people are not talking enough about Cunha at Manchester United. I think Mbeumo is going to guarantee you a level of performance that is quite steady. I think Sesko is going to get you some goals. I think Bruno Fernandes, you know what you're getting. A lot of people are not talking about Cunha's brilliance last season. He arrived at Manchester United. There's no transfer drama. Not the most expensive transfer in the world either. And he's come in. He's 2-footed, got pace, got power. He's got great amount of goals for Wolves last season. An outstanding amount. He's a cinematic box office footballer playing at Manchester United. He's exactly what they need. I think he could be absolutely huge for them next season. I think he'll be a breakout talent. We'll be talking about Cunha being a world-class footballer potentially by the end of next season. I rate him that highly. I really do. I rate him more than Cunha. I rate him more than Sesko actually as a transfer. It's outstanding. People aren't really talking about it because it happened at the start of the season. Biggest underachievers, I think it'll be Chelsea. Every season they don't actually win a major honour. I don't think they're going to win the Champions League. I don't think they're going to win the Premier League. They might come second. They might come third. I think they're going to come maybe below that. They spent 2 billion quid in this era of ownership. We're talking 4 billion lifetime purchases for Chelsea Football Club, more than any other club in the history of football. And I look at their side and they still have no world-class footballers except for Cole Palmer. That is underachieving. How can you spend that much money and not have any? Why not just not spend the money on all these random wingers and just spend 150 million quid on Isaac? For the money they've spent, they could have had Hakimi at right back, Nuno Mendes at left back. They could have had Donnarumma in goal. They could have had someone like Rodri in midfield maybe, or they could have had Declan Rice in midfield. They could have had Saka maybe, or Isaac. They could have just gone big on these massive footballers, but instead, I think they've got too much of an average squad at points for them to be not achieving what they need to do in the Premier League next season. I think they'll be underachievers. Cringy manager interview prediction. It'll be Scott Parker. There's always something going on. Someone's going to do a Scott Parker interview and edit the streets underneath. Ultimately, I think Scott Parker will be the first manager to give us a cringy managerial interview, talking about the ethos, talking about how holistic Burnley are as a football club. Dark horse. Could they push into the top half this season? I've done a separate predictions video. I don't think they will. But if there's any club that could be dark horses, you think of all the money in the Big Six. You think about what Brighton have already done so well to get into Europe at points. Brentford have done well. Bournemouth have done well. They're all in the league as it is. Wolves were in Europe a few years ago with Nuno. Nottingham Forest, Palace have all overachieved last season, arguably. Newcastle have won a cup. So there's not many clubs you can look at in the Premier League and say, actually, who's going to overachieve next season? I think Sunderland could do bits next season. I think they'll survive anyway, but could they push into the top half? Could they do that? I like the manager, Reggie Lebris. I like the way they got into the playoffs. I like the way that they beat Sheffield United. That last-minute Watson strike, absolutely loved it. Especially against Sheffield United, who would have bored the league out of existence if they'd been into the division. Diarra, I'm a huge fan of Diarra, huge fan of Adringa from Brighton. Xhaka is a Champions League level midfielder. If it all clicks, and the manager, who's the first French manager in the Premier League since Patrick Vieira, if it all clicks, Sunderland could push into mid-table. We've seen it before. It's a little bit rarer these days, but we've seen sides. I remember Wigan with Paul Jewell bounce out of the division straight into the Premier League and push up the table. It can happen. Not likely, but they could push right up to the top of the table in terms of top half finish. Young player. I'm going for a player I really, really, really like. I want to put Ethan Nwaneri in. I don't know about Odegaard and these systems and the defensive kind of security that Arteta's obsessed with. I don't think he gave him a fair crack at the whip at the back end of last season when he deserved it, in my opinion. So I can't put Ethan Nwaneri. I just don't know if he's going to play enough football. You want to put someone like Max Dowman in as well. I'm a huge fan of him. Don't think he'll play enough football. And then you got Nigora from Liverpool, who scored an outstanding goal against Athletic Club in pre-season. He's 16. That'll be his issue. But he could already be a Diaz replacement, which could be outstanding. He looks amazing, by the way. For me, it's going to be Hato because he's played hundreds of games for one of the biggest clubs in Europe, Ajax. 19 years old, centre-back. He'll play a lot of football now, guaranteed, because of the Levi Colwill injury. I think Young Player of the Year will go to Hato. I'm a big, big fan of him. Just like how Timber came out of that system as well. He's been superb at Arsenal. Player of the Year, I'm going to go to Florian Wirtz. Salah's too easy. If it clicks for Haaland, that could be too easy. If Rodri came back from injury and won the Player of the Year award, that would be outstanding. I'd love that. Phil Foden, I'm not sure. I think there are too many obvious picks. For me, if Florian Wirtz lands, he gets 15 Premier League goals, 10 assists, Liverpool win the Premier League, and he's been bossing midfields. He will win the golden, the Player of the Year award, PFA Player of the Year award. I think Florian Wirtz will do that. I think he's more than good enough to win it. I think he's so good, and people sleep on how good the signing's been. For big money as well, it's big pressure. I think Florian Wirtz will win PFA Player of the Year award. Golden Glove, it has to go to David Raya. You don't know about Alisson at points. He's had injury concerns as well. Edison, not sure about. I think David Raya will just play every game for Arsenal. They're going to practice their long throw-ins. They're going to keep a lot of clean sheets. And I think Arsenal will do very well with David Raya, who's a very, very underrated keeper. Golden Boot to wrap up. I think Mohamed Salah will get the Golden Boot again. I'm not sure about Haaland's confidence. I'm not sure about the service that Haaland will get. Now there's no De Bruyne. I mean, that was the most fruitful part of the relationship with Man City and Haaland, was that when he scored 52 goals, all of those balls were coming in from De Bruyne, really. And a Phil Foden who's on form. And both of those things we're not entirely sure about. I would put Haaland above Salah if I knew De Bruyne was in his prime years and still at the club. Same with Foden. Ultimately, I think Salah will get the Golden Boot. I think it's the easy shout. Maybe it's a bit of a cheap shout. I don't think Gyökeres will be close. I don't think Ekitike is going to get the goals. For me, I think Salah could score 30 Premier League goals next season as well. Those are my alternate Premier League predictions. Make sure you subscribe, leave your comments down below. Do you agree with my picks? I'll see you very, very soon.